Started off kind of shaky. Weather was good, but in my head it was a little shaky. And then I went to yoga class, and I discovered more things about myself that I didn't realize was possible. Flexibility. But it felt really good. I mean, yeah, there was pain and stiffness. You know, when you have stiffness, there's going to be pain to try to work the stiffness out. But I did it. I threaded the needle with my legs, not for very long though. And then I had to straighten out that opposite leg and just kind of breathe into the stretch, as they say. Breathe. I wanted to go to my infant's pose so badly. And for those of you who don't know it, the infant pose is like the backup to relieve yourself. Get to a place where you can kind of level it all out. But good morning, everybody. You're here with 360 Performance on a Friday, every Friday at 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. We're going to talk about pain points. So I made a list of some pain points out in our world. Like, for example, the pain point of Will Smith in the Oscars. There was a pain point there. Some might argue there was more than one. And then is Putin in Ukraine, is that a pain point? Well, both literally and figuratively. And not to mention the emotion that all of that does to us. And then, is there a pain point with gas prices going up as maybe a camouflage for the profitability schemes that oil companies are really playing on us? Because I just question, what was the cost of that gas and oil in their tanks before the situation happened overseas? What cost per gallon was it for them to acquire? And why didn't they maintain their pricing for us if they had old cost? You know what I'm saying? That seems to be a pain point for me. And then lastly, this is a really big pain point for me. The WNBA still has not gotten equality with the NBA. You know, when you look at the news broadcasts and social media, if a WNBA player or executive is not posting it, it doesn't get posted. And yet, they're owned by the NBA. I find that a little bit perplexing. Why there's an inequality in the image and branding of those two franchise organizations. It just baffles me. Well, like we do every week, I talk about gratitude. And what am I grateful for? Well, I just mentioned it. Getting into that pose this morning was awesome. I am so grateful for the flexibility to be able to do that. So with that being said, let me give you a brief introduction to our guest. I'll formally introduce Elizabeth to you, but I want to ask, Elizabeth, what are you grateful for?
I'm grateful for the Southern California sunshine.
As a true Cali girl should say. Awesome, awesome. As you say that, that's a great lead-in to the Mindset Moment quote that we start every week off with, and that goes like this: define success on your own terms, achieve it by your own rules, and build a life you're proud to live. So said Anne Sweeney when she was the president of Walt Disney. Now, I'm sure that there's a bit of regret, maybe angst, maybe even anger by Anne Sweeney, because once she left Disney, there were some pain points there. The conditions with which she left, based on what she had brought to the table through the years she spent with Disney as their lead executive, didn't seem to balance. I don't think she was treated fairly. And yet, the quote that she gave us today, where she says, define success on your own terms, achieve it by your own rules, and build a life you're proud to live, should be echoed for not just women, but for anybody. And today's guest is one of those people that is pretty much living her own best life. And that's Elizabeth Holman, the president of the Holman Group, located, as you said, in sunny Southern California, the LA area. Elizabeth, welcome to the show. I'm glad to have you here.
Thank you, Lowell. Dr. Whiteman, a pleasure to be here.
You know, your journey, it was one of working the long hours, kind of cutting your teeth on the family business, but at the same time having experiences that were uniquely your own to round out your experience and your education. But today, because we're talking about the pain points in business, you know, what are the regular moments, you know, that wellness of business? And if we have pain, how do we work through it? So you kind of took over for the family legacy of years of of work in that financial service, insurance, business area. So give our audience a little bit of an understanding of not only your role as president, but some of the things that you're faced with at this time as it relates to the Holman Group.
So thank you so much for that introduction. And the Holman Group is a specialty managed behavioral health care plan. And so, really what we have brought to the table is laser focus on mental health and addiction, substance abuse benefits. And so what we bring to the table is a creative, unique solution to help employers, organizations, and employees focus on mental health benefits, mental health care, and early intervention.
So if I understand you right, you are a connection, you're an intersector. You bring that service component to the awareness of the employer so that through your management and distribution, they can connect with that therapist or that intervention for whatever the reason might be. Like, I know what excited me when I learned about the Holman Group, you guys got involved in forest fires and the families that lost their homes as intervening in the emotions that creates. You've been involved in things like shootings at businesses in the California area. In addition to the more sublime, just go see a counselor. But it's just really exciting, the depth and breadth of support you give to that level of pain that raises up in organizations. How has that level of pain changed over the last 5 years?
It's really an interesting question that you ask, Lowell. The mental health arena, the mental health world, we've always had mental health needs and pain points, back as soon as the workplace was organized, back from the beginning. You saw the evolution of unions, and then you saw people trying to really make the workplace a better place. We were spending more time at work than we were at home. So you may have seen over the years some of the changes in the workplace, from value-added services, doctor services, people getting haircuts at work, building whole campuses. Well, with that brought a whole new level of challenges and pain points for organizations. Well, they were so quick to compensate and help people, they didn't really realize that my people aren't getting any rest. They're not getting any breaks. They're not making meaningful connections, and they're doing things, we saw kind of the surge of energy drinks and, different phases over the years. They're doing things to really compensate, and we're not giving them enough tools and help. So you mentioned yoga this morning. We saw a wellness movement in the workplace where people started rewarding people for participating in wellness and hoping that that would address their mental health by making their bodies feel better, but not really always talking about the mind-body connection. So we've tended to operate in silos with the latest trends and fads, and the last 5 years we've been forced to make that connection, or we see the consequences such as workplace violence, suicide, increase in the number of suicides in the workplace as well as at home. And then recently COVID and the lockdown, it just was, we were putting things, sweeping it under the carpet. We were an ostrich with our head in the sand, and we were forced to examine the issues that were at home that were spilling over into the workplace with no boundaries, working from home. Now HR leaders, executives were forced to deal with mental health issues and addiction issues and cultural incongruities within organizations where I say something and do something else. So, there's a lot going on, and we're just beginning and scratching the surface.
So, Elizabeth, you raised some really interesting questions and issues about the environment itself. Because we've changed in the last 3 years to not being in that environment and being more at home, that has caused people to rethink their participation in that work environment. Now, prior to that, I know for me, things like chairs were changed. If you had an issue with, you're on the phone a lot or on a computer, you want to get a more therapeutic, it's those those balls on wheels that you could sit on a ball and help your core muscles, or that Swedish massage kind of chair that supports you and curves you and gives you a good network of support to your skeletal structure. Are we sensitive enough to environmental issues to make it attractive to go back to work, or are we going to still have this misstep in looking at the environment in a pure way to address those pain, in some cases literally the pain points of physical distress, and change the environment, alter the furniture, alter the smell and the temperature and anything that does in fact promote productivity, but also doesn't sacrifice the employee?
Yeah, I think that unfortunately you're still going to have your leader organizations or Fortune 100, Fortune 500 that will have access to those consultants and those types of ideas. The regular businesses, America is mostly made up of small to medium-sized businesses. And it's going to take partners, employee assistance programs, mental health companies, wellness innovators to really make it affordable and for people to grab onto one or two main ideas that's going to make an overall impact. I mean, there's something so simple as setting a timer or having some type of a stop in the computers where you take a break every hour, you stretch for 2 minutes, or you ring a bell and ask everybody to drink a glass of water. Now, not all organizations are providing free water, unfortunately, still to this day, to their own workers. And so there is such easy fixes, and then there's the cell phones, right? That's still a challenge. Equipment is still expensive. Chairs are expensive. All these things you're talking about are wonderful, but nobody is saying, I'm going to make it as affordable as a number 2 pencil.
So you raise a really interesting gap in the thinking, what I believe to be an administrative and systemic pain point about looking at behavior and how does the change in the behavior impact bottom line. So are you, in your world of providing the connection and the intersection of those valuable services, being asked to connect to the profitability or the reduction of expense and the increase of profit in the benefit of that learning that you provide, that knowledge that you share with people? Or is it just, okay, we have a pain, come in and fix it, and once the pain is gone, we're done?
Unfortunately, it's what you just said. It's the latter.
That's too bad.
And, part of it is, we have talked to people. We've had maybe, 1 out of 200 people, 200 clients really interested in the return on investment and taking a look at that. So you want to look at, what's the environment? What am I measuring? What data do I already have access to? People don't realize they already have access to a lot of data. If you were going to measure sick days, absenteeism, and vacation days, if you were to do an audit and you notice that some of your best employees don't take vacation, what you think are your best employees, wow, could they even be more productive if you actually went around and audited your vacation time and said, look, we need people to take vacation minimum of once a year for a week or longer, and then we want people to take quarterly long weekends. So some of the other countries out there, the European countries, are really progressive and leading the way about taking breaks, about paternity and maternity leave. And we're starting to change with legislation a little bit, but just because legislation changes doesn't mean that the leaders within the organizations and the businesses are embracing or even knowing what to do with that law that is really for everybody's benefit.
I'm glad you said that, because it bridges right into our next question about the EAP process and people understanding the conduit methodology that provides ease of access for employees. Because typically I hear in the work that I do that, oh, it's just too cumbersome or it takes too long. How do we get that in different ways? So talk a little bit about how does the EAP process and plans satisfy that pain. It doesn't take very long. It gets to the root of what your issues are. What is it that you do in talking and sharing that message with your clients or potential clients about those pain points?
So I'd say for most clients, they're putting in the employee assistance program really to round out their employee benefits package, to be more competitive in the workplace, and to have a resource that's confidential and fast to help when employees are in crisis, if they're having issues at home that maybe are showing up at work, their behavior has changed, maybe they're taking long breaks and disappearing, maybe they're sleeping on the job, maybe they've even had a workplace accident. And we do have people that call us on a fee-for-service basis, a one-off basis for these types of emergencies or pain points, as you mentioned earlier. The Employee Assistance Program is really designed to be an ongoing, culture change, part of the culture, something that is just normalized, it's confidential, our organization cares about you, we care about your mental health, etc. And, not all people will, organizations will take the time to implement properly, communicate properly, and to really talk about it at staff meetings, at safety meetings, and really sprinkle it in as part of the culture. So I would say that those that set it up and have consultants, insurance brokers that really help them understand that this is a commitment, this is part of your culture, this is a lifestyle, probably have higher usage and more success in, I'm worried about this person. They're wearing the same clothes 2 days in a row. It looks like they're not sleeping. It looks like they're sleeping in their car across the street. Or it looks like maybe they don't have any food to eat and maybe they're homeless. I'm going to call the EAP to find out what resources that I have. I'd say only about 20 to 25% of our clients actually take advantage of everything that we have. Part of that is the importance of HR today is not as important to organizations. They think they can have less HR. They think that they can, focus on total rewards instead of people. And, they're saying, well, it's all about money, benefit plans, what I'm doing for them, compensation goals, fund classes, etc. And they're not really getting to the core of, what's happening. They don't do it until they've had a suicide or they've had a major issue. That's when they make a change.
It sounds like you're talking about that expectation accountability dichotomy. I expect you to use the EAP program because you're going to be held accountable either through some formative method, like we're going to test you, or you're going to show and demonstrate in some formative way how you're going to apply what you learned from whatever you participated in on the EAP program. It doesn't seem like, if I hear you right, it doesn't seem like employers, one, are sharing a high expectation, and two, connecting that expectation to some kind of measurable outcome that allows them to see that productivity is increased when they utilize an EAP support service in whatever area it might be in. So with that being said, the mental side of things for me is either I'm well or I'm ill. I don't want to cross over the middle line. I want to stay in that wellness side of mental health. And it sounds to me like the EAP program methods and strategies tend to help us stay on the wellness side of things if utilized, and not go to crisis and fall into that illness, cross over the divide and fall into that clinical zone of illness. Now, I'm not saying there's any guarantee or perfect world, because everybody has their own little demons they have to deal with. But it sounds like employers can have a higher role in that, and I'm not going to let the small businesses off the hook. They can do it without necessarily spending a lot of money based on what you said earlier. So when you look at this huge world of support that's needed, and we talk about mental wellness, what are some things you want to recommend to people to take a first shot at in setting that wellness foundation in their companies?
Well, I have to tell you that coaching has come up lately with some of our clients. There's still a little bit of stigma with traditional mental health services. As much as we have campaigns on social media, as much as athletes and celebrities are coming forward and saying, you know, it's okay to get help. Recent musician celebrity came forward with one of the apps and said that he was going to give it to, you know, all his fans. He was going to give a month free, and then all his 250 crew that go on tour with him, he was giving them free services for mental health through this app. That wouldn't have happened 5 years ago. That wouldn't have happened for sure. 10 years ago, the app wouldn't have even existed. So with that being said, you know, we had a surge of coaching probably 10, 15, 20 years ago where coaching was seen as the norm, and EAP and mental health was really not what people wanted. You know, we couldn't make it affordable for the masses, etc. We're shifting now back towards coaching and integrating that with employee assistance programs, and saying, if there's still a stigma in your mind or in your family about seeing a licensed professional, licensed therapist, you know, you're okay with talking about goal setting. You're okay with talking about, am I on the right career path, or what can I do to have healthy daily habits? You know, what do those look like for me? How can I become more resilient? How can I become more marketable? And, you know, I've been home for 2 years, and now I'm going to be re-entering the workplace for the first time, either for a new job or the same job. How can I be the best me possible, and fill the gaps, right? We talk about that with students, that we want to fill that learning gap. Well, we're going to fill our personal gaps with coaching. So for people that are actually, I'd say pre-hire or right upon hire, you know, doing an assessment such as the Reese motivational profile, and then looking at, you know, how many people have similar characteristics and traits, what type of a team or position am I going to hire this person for? It goes down to, you know, with unemployment, you know, really not being that high in most markets, there's not enough staff and talent to fill the jobs. Yes, there's jobs out there, but there's not enough talent. So unemployment is in a very peculiar place these days, with more and more people saying, I'm going to educate myself. I'm going to go work with a coach. I am going to go to the gym, and maybe I'm going to do that for a couple months before I go look for a job or decide, you know, what I want to do.
You know, longevity and retention are things that you just talked about directly but implied. And I'm wondering, when you mentioned the measurement of those traits and desires that give the employer and the executives in the company a better than average understanding that, yes, this is someone that will be retained. This is someone who's a safety conscious person. This is a person who can lead others, you know, and has those skills. Are there measurement tools that you routinely look at, or is measuring it another hurdle we have to overcome to really hone in on who are the best people for the best jobs?
You know, again, we talked about that gap between small and medium companies and Fortune 100, 500 companies, or people that are in a franchise type opportunity that have inherited those tools. So unless you have inherited those tools and you came from a bigger organization and now you're working at a small, medium-sized business, or you're starting up your own business, people have to look to experts or consultants and kind of scour the internet. It doesn't just show up in their lap in an employee assistance program traditional relationship. It doesn't show up with, it's not common knowledge. You know, I wish it was as common as we have to have the minimum wage poster up, you know, on the poster board in the break room, right? We have a long way to go with normalizing these types of tools. People don't even have consistent ways to evaluate employees in the workplace. People don't have consistent job descriptions. People don't have employee handbooks. So until somebody starts looking at those pieces, that's when most likely they will get curious about measuring people when they come into the job. Now, if you go through a temporary agency or you're going through a recruiter of some kind, maybe those organizations will have measurement tools or some type of testing. But our company is really listening to the needs and the pain points and the gaps that are out there, and through our coaching and offering assessments or seminars, series, whatever people are interested in, we can listen to their pain points and we can make some recommendations. And we're really good at, if we can't do it, we will get them connected, refer them to somebody who can.
So let's talk a little bit then, from what you've just discussed, the automation of the HR function. I know that you have had experiences with that in your own company. You probably see it all the time with either the companies you're contracting with or the companies you're talking with, anticipating a contract, that they talk about when you ask for an employee handbook. Well, we'll have to wait for the computer to print it off because it comes through the cloud, some other service. Is that a support service that's going to continue to be that autonomous, automated process, or are we going to integrate a little bit of the human touch to that process? And it's still called human resources.
There's a difference between what's written in the handbook and what's actually happening in your office. Yeah. And I think that people don't know what they don't know. I think that until they have their own crisis within their own family, or a tight work group, maybe a department, or the president says, this is important to me, now focus on this. Most HR that I've speak to over the years say they focus on what the C-suite or the president tells them to focus on. So one week, the high-up person is now interested in walking because they had some type of heart issues or health scare. And so they lead the organization into a walking program or focusing on health. 2 years from now, his family member could have had a suicide attempt or an eating disorder. And now he steers the company towards that.
Yeah, good
so
point.
It really is such a personal, micro experience that the pain point gets to lead the organization in that direction. It could take somebody's family member, again, who's the owner or executive, or somebody that's the top salesperson in an organization, to experience discrimination, or to experience even getting arrested, wrong place, wrong time, wrong person. And now that organization is focusing on civil rights. So I really wish that I could say we're all doing the right thing. We have access to amazing resources about, here's 7 or 10, really amazing things to run your organization. Unless you go to business school or you're an avid reader, most of us are just saying, well, there's so many things, I've got to pick 1 or 2 platforms and hope that the funding doesn't get cut. And I may even have to go into my own budget. You've heard about teachers having to make bulletin boards in school to advertise what's happening, to celebrate the different holidays or the different themes or the different types of months where we're honoring, women and different people. And it's kind of like HR, those teachers in the classroom, almost dipping into their own pockets in order to make something happen.
And, many times in my world, when cultures find themselves in that place, it's because historically they've not been attentive to the gaps and connecting and bridging those gaps so that there's a clear understanding for what is the financial need and obligation to bring things forward. And then to our point earlier, if those gaps are bridged somewhat and people start to understand the communication between one another, then resources are applied in a more effective way, and the payback through performance enhancements is very real and very well connected to the end result. It's problematic. So in the mental health side of things, we've seen a lot of things go on in the last 3 years. What are some of the high points of the last 3 years going to work, simply put, but we didn't all go to work, like get out of our house and go to work. We went to work by getting out of bed, going to the bathroom, then going to the kitchen table. And that was work with the computer. What has that last 3 years of experience done has it created more better bridges, or because we've realized what we went through and we're changing it, or are we still kind of trying to figure it out? And mentally, we're maybe not in a good place. We're still feeling a little angst and pain.
Most human resource clients, individuals that we speak to, say there's still a lot of ambiguity. They're really trying to take polls and surveys and listen and bring it up at meetings about what people want.
Yeah.
And some people are okay with a hybrid workplace. Some people do not want to come back to work at all. And some people are all for 100% of the time. They can't wait to get back to work because maybe they live alone, or their internet's not very good at home, whatever it is, or they don't have a comfortable chair at home, but they have all the office supplies and resources and great light at work, and even access to better microphones and cameras at work. So, it's really a mixed situation. The stats I heard this morning on some of the different business shows that I listen to is that there's 40% of the society of the global world that will continue to work from home. That's a very high number,
it's a big
40%.
Number. That is not only a big number, but it also indicates, because of that size, what has to change. I mean, systems, interactions, policy. There's just the policy on allowing someone who's going to be working at home to go buy office supplies, not out of their own pocket, but before that happened, they weren't in that fraternity of sales expense people that had a territory and were out on the road. Well, they got approved very quickly by accounting for their expenses.
People don't know that what you just said. We actually, I interviewed some of my best support, my banker, different people that I know, and I said, well, what's happening out there? What's your organization doing? I know you're a lot bigger than us. What are some of your clients doing? So I'm constantly asking, what's the standard? And we personally came up with a budget for people, and they could buy water, they could buy energy drinks, they could buy a desk. As long as they turned in their receipts, we wanted to say, in the beginning, while you have to be at home, we want you to be comfortable. We want you to know that we care about you, and here it is. And then we started reimbursing internet and phone, where people previously, maybe it was for managers only. And so some people still don't know that they're supposed to do that.
Yeah.
And they won't know that until somebody says, well, my internet's not reliable, or I don't have a phone that works, or my laptop broke and I didn't know how to order a new one from you because I had to use my own laptop. So unfortunately, they might get sued, or they might lose, some great talent and some long-term employees just by ignorance.
So, Liz, are we still reactionary business professionals rather than being proactive? Because what you just said indicates that we're waiting until the house falls around us before we start shoring it up, or even looking for the bugs that might be eating the foundation or the wood that we live in. I mean, are we being proactive, or are we being still reactive in the emergencies?
Certain topics we are being proactive. I think more and more people were aware during COVID of this thing called hero pay, right? Hero pay started with our first responders, healthcare workers, etc. And I've heard people actually doing a little bit of hero pay and rewards for people that still had to come into the office or deal with the public. I've heard some companies having a budget for working at home. I think there's more of a chance that people will have a budget for working at home or turn in expenses because they have accountants, they have people around them, and more people are aware of reimbursement rules under IRS, etc., than they are somebody having a mental health crisis. So I think those things are kind of evolving naturally, but again, that doesn't fill the gap. And about what you said earlier, people don't know that their employees are feeling well or doing well because they're really not asking how are you today? And some of the managers aren't finding out, what's happening within their families, what's happening where they live. Are they moving? Are they going back to school? So enough people don't know their own people. And so we would hope that, people say, well, I guess no news is good news, but that's not, we can't afford to say no news is good news.
Yeah. Let me give us both a chance to take a breath, and we're going to do some commercialization of the show and talk a little bit about what Elizabeth mentioned a minute ago. We've got a promo spot for the Reese Motivational Profile people. Reese Motivational Profiles builds a formation and foundation of measurement of those traits that define who you are and give you the basis of making decisions about, why am I here? What am I going to do? How is it going to encourage me? Because it builds scientifically a measurement of your desires. That's the Reese Motivational Profile. Go to reesemotivationalprofile.com on the internet and check it out. It's a great way to get insight to who you are and what you want for you, and being able to share more effectively that definition of what makes you the person you are and the greatness. Living your best life, as my daughter would tell me. Dad, just live your best life. I said, honey, that takes a lot more energy than I have right now. I'll try. But yeah, no, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. The other thing I want to mention to you today, everybody, this is KUHS Denver. We are streaming to you every day, 7 days a week, pretty much 24/7. I mean, there's some gaps, and every once in a while we take a breath. We go get a drink of water, things like that. And speaking of a drink of water, I want to let everybody know I have the Holman Group water bottle right here, and I want to let that be the intro to Elizabeth being able to say, how do we get a hold of you, Liz? What is the way for people to get in touch with you and get answers to the questions you've posed today?
So I'm on most social media platforms. I did post about this show. Lowell was kind enough to give me some nice promo materials. So, you can either look through the information on this show and this post. It is on Lowell's 360 Mindset posts on Instagram. I'm also on Instagram under Cali Girl, CALIEGIRL 99, which is
very fitting.
Pretty easy to remember, pretty original. And LinkedIn as well, and I'm also on Twitter. So you can look under Elizabeth Holman, the Holman Group. Also, our website is holmangroup.com, and there is contact us information on there. And you can ask for a quote, you can ask for more information, and we help people. If we can't help you, we'll tell you. If we think our competitor is better, we'll tell you. If we can't deliver what you're looking for, just put something in. Just put some type of program in.
Thanks, Liz. Really appreciate that. We'll be back to our questions in just a moment, but I want to remind everybody that today is home day opening for the Rockies. They play one of the favorite teams of Elizabeth Holman. They play the Dodgers today. Tomorrow. And today, I believe, is the opener for Russell Wilson to throw out the first pitch today. So we got a lot of things going on there that are nice for baseball season. It was in question for a while there. So I want to.
And just tomorrow, it's at 2:10 Mountain Time, 1:10 Pacific, and it's streaming on Apple TV. In case you need to know.
There's the statement from a Dodger fan right there. Do you happen to know who's pitching?
Yes, it's Bueller.
Why did I not know that you would have the answer to that question? Okay. So with that, Liz, thank you for the smile. I really appreciate it. Leadership in today's world has been challenged in many, many ways. And in one area of the training area, there's so many new things that have happened that are not in the textbooks, that are firsts. They've never been an influence in our communities as business people. So I'm speaking about COVID, I'm speaking about the economic impact that had, the social impact that had, operational. I mean, it hit every single high point of the business strategic thinking process that you can imagine. what impact has that had in your messaging, your sharing of information to current as well as future customers of yours about just leading your team?
You know, believe it or not, most people who are leaders don't really see that they're leaders, right? They just get up, roll their sleeves up, and then they realize afterwards that they're a leader or that they've led people through something. So that's the first challenge, is, you know, people really not realizing that that they're the leader. The second thing is those people that come forward and are humble enough to say, I want to become a better leader. And it's kind of like, until you have that pain point or that gap where somebody tells you you have to change your style or you get fired, as we see, you know, with some of the different companies that are out there and organizations, or they're stepping down because a story came out about this.
Yeah.
You know, one of our philosophies is we want to do the right thing when nobody is looking. And that can be a challenge when you're not all on the same page, even within your own organization. How can you know, treat the people on the phone or your customers like you would your aunt, you know, your cousin, your daughter, your son, you know, your beloved, cherished family member, your best friend? How can you do that? And how can you teach leadership skills? You know, a lot of times when we're teaching people, whether it's a webinar or a class, you know, they'll ask for things for the organization, but secretly that HR person or that leader knows that they could use a refresher or a brush up on that topic. So my folks are struggling with communication. My folks are struggling with team building. My folks are struggling with work-life balance. I haven't met one HR person that hasn't had a refresher or a reminder, or, oh, I'm going to re-engage and now recommit because you brought up things that I haven't done in 6 months.
Yeah. That's a very good point. As you were talking, I wrote down a couple of words. One is compete, being able to compete. The other one was speed of operation. The speed with which we transact business is just, it's way beyond expectation for a lot of people. And I'm wondering if we are arming our staff the time necessary to go get that renewal, to go get the refresher course, so that their speed of decision-making power, their speed of operational efficiencies, the link with all of those things is fast and efficient. I mean,
we're not.
Yeah, it's what
we're not. Now, some of my hospital clients are offering something once a week, once a month as a preventative. We're going to have this counselor available. We're going to have this workshop. So some people are doing that because burnout is evident, and the scarcity of healthcare workers, as we saw, and resources during COVID. You saw public businesses that had nothing to do with healthcare trying to donate masks and hand sanitizers to hospitals, and campaigns to bring those people lunch. They're so busy they don't even have time to eat lunch. So you saw the public realizing, this affects me. I need to help take care of the first responders, the healthcare workers, and then it goes back to normal, like it never happened.
Yeah, that's very disappointing. And as you were talking, I was reminded of a couple of things in the mental health psychology world. You know, there's triggers, there's coping mechanisms, and then there's the area that you mentioned earlier about coaching and wellness. So mental performance coaching for me is a sub-segment that's a bit more on target to dealing with cognitive coping triggers. Basically, I think a certain way, you think a certain way. We may or may not be on the same path of thought, but we're on the same team. So how do I know where your drivers are in your thinking processes, and how do you know what mine are? And if you did, how would we use them to intersect so that we're smooth in our operational efficiency with each other? We don't bump heads. I can't tell you how many times, and you may have seen these too, arguments in conference rooms because somebody was surprised by, I can't believe you said that. I've worked with you for 15 years. I don't understand how you could respond that way. Well, it's because we haven't taken the time to ask the questions and delve into routine training, be in an audience where you're sharing ideas and getting an insight with someone. So I'm wondering, from your perspective, are topically on task with the right topics to discover the cognitive processes of individuals whether it's through the EAP process or leadership, guiding folks? And if we're not hitting it, then Elizabeth, what would you recommend as some of the kind of the top topics that you would recommend for people to go, hey, renew on these, and get people staying true to this so that they survive and their environments are healthy and they're really well supported in their coping?
The basic ones that we do over and over, it used to be work-life balance. Now that's been erased because now we're working longer hours and we're working from home.
Yeah.
And so we can't call it work-life balance anymore. I'd say stress management is still applicable whether you are working at home or working at work or working at a Starbucks or wherever you're working.
Yeah.
And then I want to say that in different wellness topics, whether it be eating healthy, we see a large number of people requesting those topics. People don't know they're going so fast, like you said, that they're skipping meals or, they're just eating something cheap and greasy, on the go, and they're not really saying, well, I'm going to keep some granola bars or some, peanuts or cashews or almonds in my purse and realize that this is really good brain food. And then you have people that are, communication is still a big topic. The verbal, nonverbal communication that people don't know that they're rolling their eyes in a meeting, like you said, when you have that outburst. They don't know that they're doodling or tapping their pencil in a meeting or their knee is bouncing up and down. And nobody has given them that feedback. Well, here's a stress ball for you. Or, if you're going to type, you don't need to hit the keys so hard in the middle of our meeting because everybody can hear you, in the next building.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, nobody's giving people feedback, or they're doing it in a way that's embarrassing them and really not saying, I value you and I care about you. It should be in private, or it should just be in a business communication class about this is when you dress, this is what you're communicating when you dress this way. When you write and you're typing in all caps, you're yelling in an email. I mean, some people don't even have these survival skills. They come from college to their first job and nobody tells them not to type in caps.
Yeah, you remember, well, you probably have businesses you walk in their hallways and you see all the inspirational pictures and posters. I'm wanting to have a different version of those inspirational posters. I want to have one that has a big keyboard and huge hands on it, and the statement is, when you type, you interrupt the entire meeting. And have those kinds of inspirational things because they're practical, they're real, they communicate to the things that people aren't talking about.
And then it's festering, and then it's turning into workplace violence.
Yes. Yes.
And somebody's throwing, the whole pencil holder or the stapler across the cubicle while they're on the phone, and then they wonder why somebody comes back with a knife or a gun or something like that. And it can be, you can de-escalate and teach, really good communication and promote nonviolence in an organization by addressing things when they're small. And giving people a guide or a tool book for success. This is how we expect you to communicate. You can't be texting the proposal over to the client, right? You can't do it in a text message. Well, I didn't know that. Nobody told me that I had to use email or I had to deliver it in person or whatever.
The expectation of professionalism still has guidelines and parameters. So let's flip it over. We've made some comments about the workplace environment in the more traditional go to work, go to an office, go to a cubby, whatever. Let's flip it over because we've got 40% of the population saying, I want to work at home. So now they're at home. How do I know they're working? How do I know they're not struggling mentally? Maybe there's somebody that should not have been on the list to work at home because we didn't measure their desires and we're now in error. We should have had
So
them
if you
come
would
to
have
work.
had the Reese motivational profile and you would have done that at the beginning,
Yep.
or within the first 90 days of hiring somebody, you could have seen, what you needed to do with that person, or what extra support or tools could have been successful for that person. Right now, we're doing silly things like reminding people to put clothes on when they're working from home before you get on the camera. I mean, that's kind of the extent of the support that we're giving people.
Maybe like comb their hair a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and look, I will accept, and I have people that said, hey, I'm going to be on the call, but I'm not going to be on video. So there are then companies that say, we're not allowing that. Our rules are everybody has to be on video.
And that's not reasonable.
No, exactly, it's not reasonable, especially if the employer knows there are certain people in their culture that are not 7 a.m. meeting people. But if they comply to be on the meeting, for goodness sakes, don't let them have the freedom of not being on camera.
Maybe they're not speaking and they're eating their breakfast because they're in back-to-back meetings and that's the only time.
Yeah.
Like me, I have eaten breakfast during early meetings before because I knew, that maybe I was in the office, out the office, even a meeting for business, and I needed to get that in. But you shouldn't have to say that. It should be that person's meeting deadlines. Yeah. That person's responding to emails timely. That person's available for collaboration. Don't penalize them for the camera.
So the challenge then, Liz, let's talk about this, is innovation and creativity. Leadership applying innovative changes in both structure and systems to create settings that address the issues of maybe the 40%, but certainly if they did, linking the other 60%, so that the cultures really can run and smoothly operate given all these changes. What are some areas of creative thinking that you have looked at or talked about that are innovative, that are going to create innovative processing changes within the workplace?
Well, I mentioned it earlier, the Reese motivational profile.
Yep.
If more people took advantage of that, and resilience, for example, was something that was important to them, that we have, fast work environment, high stress, demanding public, short deadlines, then they could really give people the tools that they need and put them on the right team. So that's, number one, I would say that, more people need to take advantage of.
I've seen a lot of companies hire coaches within their culture. That seems to have the lack of independence and objectivity. What do you think about that? You agree with it, or do you have a modification of that position?
The modification would be that most people, even within my own organization, prior, think that a coach is a babysitter or a penalty, that they're doing something wrong that needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
Kind of like in EAP when we do what's called a management referral. People feel like if you word it incorrectly and you don't present it the right way, they feel like they're going to the principal's office, that the EAP is punitive. You have to word it, first of all, that it's optional, and you want people to share their success stories about how much it helped them, and maybe have a meeting or an opportunity for somebody to talk to somebody that they respect and admire within the organization to hear their personal success stories, if they feel comfortable, if it doesn't violate, too confidential of a situation.
So if I hear you right, the EAP process and systems allows employees, when the company brings this in, to receive coaching systems support, receive mental health support, receive perhaps even just educational support, going to a class, where if they did it on their own, it would be economically out of bounds for them. They wouldn't be able to afford it on their own. So there's those two benefits, right? New training, as well as it's economical, because the company's paying for some of it, and there may or may not be an additional cost for the employee.
Yes.
But it's less expensive. So as we get close to the end of the show, answer this question for me. Is the hybrid workplace here to stay, and will that 40% grow?
I think that it's here to stay. I think that you're going to have people that will always be working from home. I've spoken to many people that have been working at home for 10 years. and they're never going to go back into an office. I know people that have moved, even some of my own employees no longer live in Southern California. I've got people living in San Francisco right now, and I've got people living, in other parts of the state. So I think that as long as, we're out of balance in society, you're going to have to get creative and meet people where they're at in order to keep up with the need for talent, better technology, better ideas, healthy individuals. If not, you're going to be limited to a talent pool that's going to dictate the terms of how you run your business, whereas you want to be in a collaboration and a partnership with people that you bring in, and that you're bringing in experts that can teach you and you can teach them, that it's this give and take. So if we have the mentality, oh, everybody must come back to work, it's my way or the highway, you're probably not going to have a big return on investment, and your profits, might barely go up. You could potentially grow 10 times, 100 times if you allowed hybrid or people to permanently work at home. So part of it is, let's look at your bottom line and then look at the areas of growth within your organization, different departments, et cetera.
That's excellent, Liz. Thank you for summarizing that way. That really puts a dot on the top of the I of focusing in on not only the cultural influences to the changes we're facing from the pandemic we've just gone through. I agree with you. It's going to stay. It's going to be here because we can. Technology allows us to be able, unfortunately, regretfully, it took a pandemic to push our mindset into that direction. Now, that being said, I have a concern, a caution for business to rush too quickly to using systems to automate processes that still need the human touch. Telemed is in place, a lot of video conferencing is there, video conferencing that has that therapeutic and clinical piece to it when it relates to mental health. What are some areas that you believe in business that we should still maintain more than an average amount of personal human touch?
Well, my business, the Employee Assistance Program, Mental Health Benefits, for example, there are a lot of apps out there. There are companies that are actually firing employee assistance programs, traditional models, and saying, we're going to put in this app, we're going to even pay for it for all of our employees, and then their problems are going to go away and our problems are going to go away. So they're not getting the organizational support. I think if you're going to do that, you need a hybrid of, here's a program to support the organization. We're going to push this app. We want instant access for our employees, but how do we get the marriage of both sides? Because I see some people, doing all or nothing, and when they have their first suicide or their first major pain point, by having the app by itself and not enough organizational support because they're too small for that app, right? Maybe they're a group of 100 or 150 employees, and the app caters to Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies. They'll treat you like a traditional EAP would by giving you organizational support, flyers, whatever you need, promotional pieces, talking to your employees, and make it seem like they're doing account management and promotion. So, and then I see other people just trying to say, we're just going to be part of your network through your medical plan. We're going to be an extension of your mental health network. And again, they're not giving enough organizational support, and they're not aware of compliance issues. The biggest issue I see right now is people practicing mental health across state lines where they're not licensed to practice, and that eventually will catch up with people.
Yes, you're mentioning some really interesting things about EAP. It's a huge benefit to employees to minimize their costs, if not eliminate that, for them to be able to get more training, more insights, and manage that mental state of wellness for themselves, as well as deal with if the future brings obstacles that creates a little bit of discomfort, having a system in place that you could go to for answers, and when needed, the human touch along with it. But we are in a state of flux. The regularity of business, the wellness of business is kind of a moving target. And I'm hoping that with people like Elizabeth Holman and the Holman Group, that you as business owners, big and small, are going to seek questions to them for answers, I hope. So Liz, in the final few seconds we have, let everybody know what's the best way to directly connect with the Holman Group and or yourself.
So our website is holmangroup.com. You can also email us at theholmangroup@holmangroup.com. Social media, I'm on LinkedIn under Elizabeth Holman. You can search for the Holman Group. Instagram, CaliGirl99, CALIEGIRL99. And then I'm also on Twitter. And, pretty much you can just do a search on the internet and you'll find us. Phone number, emails there, and we usually get back to you same day, next day, depending on when your request comes in, and we're happy to help answer any questions you may have.
Support is many times hard to find, but when you find it and it's direct and focused in the areas we've talked about today, that's what we're all about at 360 Performance, giving you processes and procedures with the insights and expertise of people that are professionally trained, like Elizabeth Holman and the Holman Group. Next week, we're going to have a special guest. It's a little bit back to sports, but program building an elite sports program. In this case, it's football. The Colorado Mesa University Mavericks have a new head coach. I happen to know Coach K. It's Miles Kochever. Coach K, Miles Kochever, is the new head coach over there. We're going to talk to him about what is his method for building an elite football program. In a time when we're coming out of a pandemic, we can actually go to practice without wearing a mask. We can have fans in the stands. All of that's available now. Exciting times. But with a new coach, with a new program that's somewhat depressed but building its way back, there are challenges, and we're going to talk about those challenges. That's next week on the 15th, once again at 11 o'clock Mountain Standard Time every Friday. Streaming at KUHSdenver.com. Have a great day, everybody. Talk to you soon.